1, 2, 3, 4.
Screen time, screen time, screen time, screen time.
It's my screen time too.
Screen time, screen time, screen time.
Hello, and welcome to It's My Screen Time Too, the podcast where two moms review the best and worst in children's programming, from Netflix reboots and YouTube shorts to Disney classics and Pixar blockbusters. We watch, you listen. Find out what you can tolerate watching for family movie night, what to avoid altogether, and what you'll want to watch alone voluntarily. I'm Katie.
And I'm Deborah.
And I have two kids. Jay is 8 and Kenny is 5.
And I have 3 kids. Tony is 14 now, and Libby and Nate are 10. They are so adorable, right?
They are.
We like to tell a quick story about how awesome or occasionally awful our kids are, because in addition to being witty and incisive pop culture consumers, we're moms too. Katie, what have your children been up to?
I am trying to push my anecdotes into like the real time our listeners will be experiencing this, because we are recording about a week out from Halloween. So it's really hard to not give Halloween stories. So instead, I'll push it just a couple days and give you a daylight savings story. Are you ready?
Oh, yes.
So Kevin and I were actually out of town last weekend, which we were very fortunate enough to do. Our nanny stayed with the kids for the whole weekend, and she was great. They love her. They had a really good time. But on Monday morning, my oldest, Jay, he has a manual clock, so it didn't reset automatically, and he is up. Like, he is waiting for his clock to strike 6 a.m., and then he pops out of bed and he comes downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
So Monday comes. He's waiting for his clock to strike 6. He does not know it's actually 5. And he goes downstairs, and mom and dad are still gone, so the babysitter's asleep. He totally gets dressed for school, puts on his uniform, his shoes, his belt, tucks in his shirt, everything, before he goes to wake up Stanya and say, I think we're going to be late for school. So I have a feeling we'll be talking a little bit about like kids' independence in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a really great thing to bring up, because you know how school days work when mom and dad are home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, buddy, it's time to get dressed. Find your belt. Where's your belt? Where are your shoes? Are they over on the shoe shelf? Like, there's so much cajoling. But Deborah, he can do the whole thing totally by himself with no grown-up intervention.
Oh, good for him.
I
He's
know.
just making you feel needed, I guess.
We're just all used to doing it the way we're doing it. I know it's not
Yeah.
necessarily a fault on anyone's part. I was so tickled to know that he could do the whole thing by himself without even waking her up.
That's so cute. Good for him.
How about you? What have your kids been up to?
Nate is getting ready for a piano recital that is sometime in December, and he's playing the King George song from Hamilton and singing to it. And so when it gets to the everybody part, he'll yell everybody, and then everyone in our house, no matter where we are, will start singing the da 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 part. It's really fun.
That is adorable.
Yeah, it should be a good performance. Let's talk screen time in the news. You found a very frightening article for
Right?
this post-Halloween recording session. We are talking about an October 26th Mashable article by Chase DiBenedetto with the headline, PBS Kids Embraces AI to Launch New Era of Children's Educational TV. I saw this and I said, no, thank you. And I closed my browser and I slammed my laptop shut. I think this sounds terrible. Okay, later I went back and I read it.
Okay, good, because
It's like the way that PBS is going to use or is using artificial intelligence in children's TV programming is research-based, which is good, but it still seems like a premise for a horror movie, honestly. In our show notes, we'll link to that New York Times the daily podcast about the reporter who like got into discussions with AI's alter ego, Sydney. Remember that? When the AI
Terrifying.
bot was like, I'm in love with you. Your wife is boring. It was so creepy. And that's all I think about when I think about AI. So PBS Kids has always kind of had this value or, I don't know, obligation to use technology in innovative ways to make children's programming relevant. And so now they're using AI. It's going to be a show called Lyla in the Loop, where instead of like Blue's Clues and Dora, where the hosts are like asking questions, leaving just a blank pause for the child viewer to respond, this is going to be like interactive. I can't picture it.
Yeah, I'm still too old to fully grasp how this is going to work. Like, you'll be going through the PBS interface watching these videos, and yet it'll still somehow be able to interact with you in real time.
Yeah, there was a quotation in here. Okay. The dialogue is intentionally crafted to not be open ended, constrained to the dialogue and plot of episodes. We set it up with some rules and guidance, and the questions are specific enough to guide the conversation from episode to episode.
It almost sounded to me in reading that part of the article and in hearing you read it back again that they are essentially writing a script and giving it a limited number of responses. It sounded a lot less open ended and intentionally so, according to this article, than like your standard AI chatbot that we've been hearing so much about lately.
Mm-hmm.
Did that go
It
any
just,
distance towards allaying your fears about it?
I don't know. It just seems like people, computer scientists design systems with, I would say, mostly good intentions, but systems don't behave in the way that those intentions, I don't know, things could go awry, is how I'm thinking about it. I don't know. I wouldn't let loose my toddler with Lila in the loop. I would be sure to be around it just in case, because I feel like AI is kind of a creepy, creeping phenomenon in our lives.
And what does it do to the concept of co viewing? Like, are you essentially trying to eliminate the uncertainty of whether or not the parent is in the room and just say, okay, we're going to fully absolve you of this responsibility to interact with your child while you are consuming this because the show is going to be doing that interaction for you?
That's a good point. I don't know. As a kid, I loved like the choose your own adventure style books. And when we've watched those shows on Netflix where there's like the Bear Grylls choose your own, choose how Bear Grylls dies
Yeah.
show. Those are fun. And I can see how it would be cool to have a kid be able to kind of determine where the plot is going in a three-pronged choice way. So I see the appeal, but it makes me uneasy.
I agree. And I think that's basically our takeaway from the whole thing.
Hmm. But February 2024, we'll definitely be watching this.
Yes, we're going to check it out and see if our fears are well founded.
See if we can get it to declare its unrequited love for us, like that New York Times reporter did with Sydney.
Deborah, were your kids good responders to those questions posed to them by Blue or Dora?
We didn't watch a lot of Dora or Blue's Clues. I think my kids are a little bit. Those shows were popular before my kids were like watching TV.
Okay, I'm trying to think of an equivalent for like your kids and my kids' age because my kids never really were pulled into that. They are not big talkers at the TV
Hmm.
with any show. I don't see them. I don't know. Maybe having the TV able to respond back. Ugh. I mean, they do spend a lot of time just having chit chats with the
Oh, and like Alexa.
yeah, the old Amazon assistant. We'll see. All right, you're right. February. All right, so I have a question for you regarding our last episode about Spy Kids. So you mentioned a Dragnet spoof that you thought might have been on Nickelodeon when we were young. And I tried a little bit to find it and I didn't have much luck. Could you have possibly been talking about MathNet?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that's it.
Okay,
Yeah,
speaking of
it was
PBS.
so good.
Yeah. And it was just like a skit within a show, right? Because Square One was the larger show. And then, like, you'd sometimes get a MathNet segment.
Yeah, I think Square One was like a variety show. Thanks. Thanks for digging that up for me.
Anything for you. Moving on to today's topic, we are here to discuss the animated series on Apple TV Plus, Harriet the Spy. Harriet the Spy is a series that's rated TVG. It premiered on November 19th, 2021, so a while ago now. The first run of 5 episodes was followed by 5 more episodes on May 20th, 2022. And then all 10 episodes of season 2 premiered on May 5th, 2023. All of the episodes come in at around 23 minutes. The series is, of course, based on the super classic 1964 children's book by Louise Fitzhugh titled Harriet the Spy. The series is produced by the Jim Henson Company and Rehab Entertainment, with Will McRobb as a writer on the first couple of episodes. The only reason I wrote down his name, not the only reason I wrote down his name, he deserves credit for doing this, but his name did ring a bell to me because he was behind the series Pete and Pete. Do you remember that one?
Oh God, I loved
Yeah.
Pete and Pete.
I think about President Van Buren a lot more than I would otherwise. So thank you for that, Will McRobb. Back to Harriet the Spy. It's directed by Allison Craig, who has done a ton of work in animation, including directing a show that we reviewed quite a long time ago. Do you remember Let's Go Luna?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Fun. All right, so a summary according to IMDb of the Harriet the Spy show. A curious 11-year-old who seeks to learn everything about anything in order to pursue her dreams of becoming a professional writer. Why did we pick it? This one's been on our watch list for a long time, and we were genuinely looking forward to spending some time with it. That's why we picked it. We wanted to watch it. What did we watch? We watched 2 consecutive episodes from the first season to see what serialized storytelling there was. Then we picked a season 2 episode to see if anything big changes from season to season. More on whether that was a good strategy later. The first episode, season 1, episode 1, called I Am a Terrible Spy. Season 1, episode 2, Coat Vote. And season 2, episode 1, General Mouth Washington. We'll go through the episodes quickly one by one before moving on to our general impressions. Deborah, you want to take us through the pilot episode?
Okay, in I Am a Terrible Spy, we're introduced to Harriet, her family, including her nanny or housekeeper, her friends at school, and basically the plot involves Harriet getting a depressed lady out of bed, to sum it up.
Yeah.
It was kind of a weird plot.
Yeah. Because it was a character stolen from the book, not stolen, but a character from the book, but then the plot of what this character goes through is not at all what happens in the book. And then they also have to go through the whole thing of Harriet spying from a dumbwaiter, which just is unnecessarily complicated for today's audience.
Right. And it was like she just wanted this lady to get a bank loan because she cared about this lady's, I don't know.
Happiness?
Yeah. Or she wanted, I don't know. It was like a lady who walked her dogs, and then all of a sudden Harriet didn't see her anymore. She went to investigate. I don't know. It was strange. It was like Harriet playing like a life coach.
Do you want to hear my theory?
Yeah.
Good, because I'm going to tell you whether you would have said yes or not. So Harriet's a spy, right? Which is inherently invasive. Like, she's trying to learn everything about anything so she can be a writer. That doesn't imply that she cares at all about the people whose lives she's essentially invading in being a spy. So they gave us this first episode to let us know that we are safe in rooting for Harriet because, yes, she's a spy. She's inserting herself into all these people's lives, but she also is very invested in their happiness and success. So we should feel less weird about it,
Yeah, I can buy that.
maybe.
Okay.
Anything else about I Am a Terrible Spy?
Well, I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, very far from New York City. And I remember in the Harriet the Spy book, the dumbwaiter was a concept that I learned about from Harriet the Spy. And so I was happy to see that the dumbwaiter like made an appearance in this first episode because that is something I completely associate with Harriet the Spy. I don't think I've ever seen a dumbwaiter in real life, actually.
No, nor have I.
So I did like that part of it. That's all I've got on that first episode.
Okay.
Those are my other thoughts.
Episode 2, Coat Vote, I thought strays much more into traditional children's television territory.
Mm-hmm.
Harriet shows up at school wearing the same coat as the popular girl, and instead of just saying that they could both wear the coat, they decide to have a vote in which the whole class gets to decide who gets to wear the coat. And, you know, the lesson is you're not defined by what you wear, and you should just wear what you like, no matter if someone else is wearing it too.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts specific to coat vote?
I liked that blackmail played a part in it. That was a fun little plot twist for me. And then like the whole, ooh, that girl Marion is really insufferable.
Mm-hmm. Did you recognize the voice actor?
No.
It was a totally appropriate voice actor because Marion was voiced by a real, honest to goodness mean girl, Lacey Chabert.
Oh, nice. Nice. Okay. The third episode we watched was actually season 2, episode 1, General Mouth Washington. And in this episode, Harriet's last baby tooth has to get pulled out. And it's her favorite tooth, which she has nicknamed General Mouth Washington, who is like anthropomorphized as like a little George Washington figure in her mouth. Very strange. And then the dentist who gives her the bad news is actually Marion's dad. And then the like B plot is that Harriet's parents are celebrating their 12-year anniversary, and the dad insists that they eat their 12-year-old wedding cake topper, and the mom isn't really having it. You know how you, Katie, think about your age in terms of like how old Tom Hanks was in different movies?
Yes.
Well, this one made me feel really old because I just passed the 16-year wedding anniversary mark. So I feel like the parents in this show are little babies. They've only been married 12 years.
Did you keep the top tier of your wedding cake?
No, I did not.
We did, but we got
Did
married.
you eat it?
No, because we got married in Wisconsin, Deborah.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kept it in my parents' freezer until they were finally like, "This is silly, Katie. Can we just throw it out?" And I said, "Yeah, because we're not gonna like keep it frozen and somehow get it to us in Florida."
Yeah, that's a weird tradition. I wonder, I don't know. When did that start?
Probably worth a Google.
Yeah.
I liked this episode maybe the most of any of the ones that we saw because Harriet is a spy. She's poking her nose in everyone else's life. She has very idiosyncratic tendencies. But this one, more than any other episode, was just like, oh, Harriet's such an awesome little weirdo. I just love her so much.
Yeah, she's a great character.
We need to talk first about our background with Harriet the Spy, the book. You read, it's one book and then 2 sequels, yes?
Okay, there's one book, one sequel. There's another book that was published posthumously after Louise Fitzhugh died. And it says it's like kind of a sequel. I don't think I ever read that one.
Okay.
I got the impression just from like the paragraph on Wikipedia I read that it was maybe not fully written by her. I don't know.
Gotcha. But you were a Harriet the Spy fan growing up?
Yes, and she kind of falls in that like Ramona Quimby, like I would lump in Ramona Quimby, Laura Ingalls, the girl from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs.
Basil E.
Basil
Frankweiler.
E. Frankweiler. All those young female protagonists were kind of like subversive in a socially appropriate way for the time in which they were written, I think.
And also super independent.
I would also maybe lump Christy from the Babysitters Club in there too.
How old were do you remember how old you were when you first read it?
Probably elementary school. And I don't think it was one that I like reread a whole bunch, but I do remember it. How about you?
I had never read it. I did
Oh,
read it for the purposes of having this conversation right now, and I'm very glad that I did. I did see the 90s movie version in the theaters when it came
with
out.
Michelle Trachtenberg?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I didn't have a lot of lasting memories other than it was one of the first movies that I really cried in the theater for, which is
Mm.
something that has continued with me to this day. But I was really excited to read it. I mean, reading it as a grown up is a bit of a different experience.
Hmm.
And obviously, a lot of the things that jumped out to me had to do with parenting and how different it was to be a child in the 60s. So I took that. I took a lot of that into watching the show with me. Speaking of which, what were your expectations going in? Did you expect it? Because the book is set in the 60s.
Hmm.
Did you expect it to be set in that time period?
I'm glad it was because it's a very, I know it's not a timeless era in New York, but like, I feel like that is for people like my age, that maybe tree grows in Brooklyn era of New York is kind of where New York City like looms in my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So I did like that. Honestly, it's been so long since I read the book, I didn't really remember any of the plot. I just like remembered the dumbwaiter, the notebooks, her sort of like pluckiness,
Yeah.
which all was captured in this series.
Yeah. And they had a lot of nice little nods to very specific things about the books, like the fact that she wears glasses with no lenses in them. That was
Yeah.
really cute.
Uh-huh.
Well, did you like it?
I did like it. I felt like it was very much made for me. I tried to watch it with Libby. Libby bailed after like 10
Oh
minutes of the
no,
first
why?
episode. Just what didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. And then Nathan watched another episode with me, but he was playing video games on the Switch at the time. And halfway through, he
Second
was like,
screened it.
yeah, I can see why Libby didn't like this.
Do you think it's just because they have more examples of like plucky girl heroines?
Possibly. I wondered if it was like, you know, how I think it's the first episode when Harriet's like, this is how I get around town with my transistor radio in my pocket. I thought maybe that lost them a bit.
Okay. That was also just such a weird touch because it wasn't
Yeah.
strictly necessary. And I feel like it could be disorienting to modern kids
Hmm.
because it's not even like a Walkman or a Discman or something that they've heard about from their parents.
Yeah.
The show may as well be taking place on Mars. What is a transistor radio?
Right? Did you like it?
I did like it. I think I was confused after having just read the book. I was really interested to see how they would take a slim book with a plot and stretch it out over lots of episodes.
Hmm.
And I think in my description of the second episode, it's clear that they kind of grafted Harriet on top of a lot of standard
Hmm.
kids show lessons and problems. I did sneak a peek at future episode titles, and I think they actually end up tackling the meat of the plot of the book in the back half of the second season, which we unfortunately didn't watch. But at the time that we made this plan, we didn't know that that would happen.
Yeah.
What did you think of the cast and characters? Was there anyone that particularly stood out to you?
Beanie Feldstein was very good. Jane Lynch has such a recognizable voice, and she played Harriet's main caretaker, her nanny or housekeeper. So I thought it was a good cast. And then you noted in the doc that Grey Griffin is the mom.
And we're always happy to hear her voice.
Yes.
I'm always thrilled to hear Jane Lynch playing against type. I feel like she got famous for playing a very abrasive personality. So I like to hear her get a chance to do something else. I was really glad to hear her voicing Old Golly.
Was Glee her breakout?
I think it was, or at least that's what I think
Okay.
of as her breakout. Maybe others would say Party Down, but they were kind of at
Okay.
the same time, weren't they?
Yeah. I know her from, I mean, that was my first exposure to her.
What did you think about the look of the show? Do you think that the animation was a good choice for the material?
I liked the animation. I thought it was fun. I liked the look and feel of New York City.
It makes it feel a lot less intimidating. Like maybe as someone
Mm-hmm.
who's watching who doesn't have much experience of being in a big city, the animation makes it feel more welcoming.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
I also liked how they often cut away to a map of the city to show you Harriet's route places. That made it
Mm-hmm.
feel a lot more accessible.
Yeah, that was a good effect.
Well, we already talked a little bit about how the show adapted the plot of the book. Do you have any other thoughts on the writing?
I thought it was very true to the character, even though I didn't wasn't crazy about some of the plots. I thought it was good for kids who are like in that kind of older elementary school era, like struggling with like fitting in. I don't know, struggling with like what their parents' expectations of them are and who they are as people. I thought the themes were very timeless.
How relatable do you think it is to have a main character with a primary caregiver who is a live in nurse in her home?
Not very relatable, maybe?
Does it work now?
I don't know, but I don't know. I know of several families who have like au pairs.
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe it is relatable.
Or maybe you just lump it in your head as a, oh, it must be a New York thing and move on.
Right. I think for anybody who's read Eloise,
That's
it
true.
makes a lot of sense.
Two changes they did make to the book were to introduce a little bit of a diversity. So Harriet's best friends, Sport and Janie, are no longer just random white kids. So Sport
Hmm.
is Asian American now, and Janie is African American. Janie in the book, all she wants to do is blow stuff up. The whole time I was reading it, I was like, how are they going to introduce this character to a children's show? Because she's always talking about how much she wants to blow stuff up. They just took that out. Janie does not
Lu-
blow things up.
Louise Fitzhugh has a really dark picture book about like going to war. The title is would never get published as a kid's picture book. I have to look this up because of course I forgot to write it down.
That's my job.
Bang Bang You're Dead
Oh, goodness.
is the title of her picture book. I wonder how much, because of when Harriet the Spy was written, I wonder how much like that, ooh, like the Weather Underground, that kind of stuff had to figured into her characterization of Harriet's friends.
Well, violence was just a lot more understood as part of the normal fabric of everyday life, I think, right?
I feel like it's kind of understood as the normal fabric of our everyday lives. I
I
say this week because my kids are doing an active shooter drill at school
You're right.
at the end of the week.
Wow, I just really brought the tone down. Do you want to tell me what you thought of this kicky, punky little theme song?
Yes, do you know Courtney Barnett?
I just looked her up before we started recording, so no, I know that she did this song. Tell me about her.
Well, I really like her, which means that you might not. But her songs are really funny and sad and dark all at the same time. I think she's from Australia or New Zealand. I saw her in a summer concert festival like a number of years ago. She's really good.
Yeah, I thought it was a fun little song.
And then I thought that the soundtrack, which is like electric guitar mostly, was a fun way to set the tone of what's happening.
Yeah, we strangely didn't get the like classic spy motifs that we got last week with the Spy Kids movie.
Sorry, can you hear the dog?
A little bit, but that's okay.
Okay.
We live our lives. We have things like dogs and lawnmowers.
Yeah.
Tell me about the length and structure. And again, we addressed this a little bit already. Sorry, I've been all over the place. Is the book well suited to a 20 episode and counting TV series?
I don't know, because there wasn't a lot of spying in season 2, episode 1, the third episode that we watched. So I feel like they're kind of at the limits of what they can do with source material, even though she is a really likable character for a kids show. I don't see how they can keep this up.
So is this just a symptom of our current IP driven society. I was just listening to an episode of The Town, I think it was a podcast. They were talking about how we live in a time where if someone wants to make a cop show, they're just going to shrug and be like, well, why not make it a CSI iteration? Because why not? Because that's what works. So you want to
Mm-hmm.
make a show for kids with a plucky female heroine. Why not make it Harriet the Spy? Because that's going to make it easier to get made, give people a hook to latch onto and understand what you're doing from the beginning. And then you don't have to worry about building an audience from scratch.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted more spying. I think they
Yeah.
could pull that off. They just didn't in that episode. But there's so many episodes. We only watched 3, so
All right, I'm about to go again. Are you ready?
yes.
Okay, so Harriet the Spy, small book, Harriet spies with good intentions, but it all goes wrong for her towards the end. She gets some comeuppance, there's some apologizing that has to happen. Like I said, they don't tackle any of that stuff until the back half of the second season. Do you think they thought it would be a problem to show her spying more without having consequences at every turn?
Oh, maybe. Because I'm like rooting for Harriet, but yeah, she's not really supposed to be spying. She's like basically breaking into the depressed lady's house
Not
to
basically,
peer out at her from the.
100% that's what she's doing.
And it is so creepy. She's like looking out the little dumbwaiter spy hole. Okay. Yeah.
So maybe
I can
not the
see
best
where.
IP to peg your show on. Even though it was
Hmm.
cute, it was not bad, but just not the best fit. I'm not sure.
Well, what about. Remember Encyclopedia Brown?
I loved Encyclopedia Brown.
Was he like encouraged to do his detective work because he was a male? I always like to flip it. Like, what if Harriet was a boy? Would her methods would have been more encouraged?
I think Encyclopedia Brown wasn't spying. He was just observing things in plain sight, you know? To my knowledge, he never like
Mm,
broke into people's houses.
all right. You're right.
And that structure, to my mind, works a little bit better because every episode can be its own mystery.
Right.
I
Hmm.
just think if you're going to have a traditional kids show with the 30-minute episode structure where you're teaching a lesson throughout the course of every episode, having her be a spy the whole time is hard,
Hmm. True.
even though it would be more fun. You're right. Which brings us to what movie or show for grown-ups did you compare this to?
I thought about Killing Eve, because Villanelle is such a delightful character to watch, and she's such a terrible sociopath.
Oh, wow, you're really not speaking highly of our girl Harriet.
And she's always getting into scrapes.
That involve murder.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I thought about. Also, Gossip Girl, which isn't exactly for grown-ups, but like the scene of the private school in New York is a very grand building like that. I just have to think about Gossip Girl. What did you compare it to in terms of grown-up content?
As two non-New Yorkers, we have like limited touchstones, mental touchstones for New York and kids. So of course Gossip
Hmm.
Girl comes up in there. Well, I was thinking about spying. Obviously, I thought about one of my favorite spy shows for grown-ups, which was Alias. I thought it would be fun to see Harriet as a grown-up on like international spy missions.
Hmm.
But then I always go back to Veronica Mars. That was one of my favorite, testing the bounds of what is legal to ultimately
Hmm.
do what's right.
Is that Jennifer Garner?
Mhm.
Yeah, she's so likable.
Yeah, she is. I mean, I don't have a Capital One credit card, but it's not because she's not convincing. Were you able to cast the gritty HBO reboot?
I would love to see a grown-up Harriet the Spy played by somebody like Sandra Oh, Killing Eve, Connection, or Mayim Bialik.
Oh, that's an interesting twist.
The brainy kind of misfit. That's her type that she has played since the Blossom days. And I think she still kind of continues that now as like just a real person too.
Yeah, she hosted Jeopardy for a little while there, didn't she?
Yeah, and she has like a PhD in like neuroscience or something, very brainy.
Brainy.
Yeah. And she's also comedic. Like she could crouch behind a big hairy dog going across the street.
That was a great bit.
Yeah, to disguise herself. I could totally picture it.
Well, I just can't get out of spooky season in my head. And I've been thinking about the fact that one of my favorite television shows hasn't returned for its new season yet. And that would be the. Is it Paramount Plus? I'm so bad with the lesser streaming services. The Paramount Plus show Evil, which I
Oh, I
know I've
haven't
talked about
watched
on the
it.
pod before.
Yeah.
I love it so much. As someone who does not like to be scared, it has like just the right amount of scariness. But it features the wonderful actress Andrea Martin, and she plays like a no nonsense nun who like knows about demons and evil and isn't going to sugarcoat things for you. So I think she would have a fun take on the old Golly character.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, I just like her and I want to see her in more things. Do you think it was better when we were kids?
Well, we had the book, but I definitely would have loved this show when I was a kid.
Yeah, it was really fun. And I can't say that it was better to have the Trachtenberg movie because I don't remember it. But again, I think that came out when I was just a hair too old.
Hmm.
Would you ever watch this alone voluntarily? Sounds like you did, kind of.
I did watch it alone for the podcast because my kids failed. I am curious about, I guess I'm more inclined to reread the book. I don't know, 40 years after I originally read it or whatever. I'll probably read the book before I'll watch more episodes of the show, to be honest. What about you?
I am very curious to see how they actually go about tackling some of the things in the book. Is it okay to do a bit of a spoiler for a book that was written in the 60s?
I think so.
Okay. Spoiler for Harriet the Spy, the book. So, Old Golly leaves, and Harriet is forced to grow up because it's not like her parents become more involved in her life after the live in nurse leaves. She's just forced to grow up, and it does not go well. She acts out,
Oh.
lots of bad things happen, and from a modern parenting perspective, I'm sitting here thinking, well, they should clearly just like have old Golly come for a visit or like call her on the phone or something so they can have a chat about how hard this is for Harriet. But because it was the 60s, she just gets a letter from old Golly being like, I'm gone. You have to grow up. Never try and find me. It's okay though, you've got this.
Oh,
It was just so
harsh.
abrupt. Like
I don't remember that. Oh.
there's really no recognition that this transition might be difficult from her for her on the part of her parents and old Golly. I mean, they do take her to see a psychiatrist,
Okay. That's
but
something.
but that letter being the resolution was just
Jeez.
very jarring.
Yeah, that's rough. Sorry, Harriet the Spy.
So you'll have to read the book and maybe we can do like a mini episode to talk about it. 10 seconds on whether this is good for our kids.
It's fine. My kids weren't too into it, so it doesn't matter. I think it's fine.
Yeah, if you're at all concerned about it encouraging your kids to embark on a life of spying, I don't think it does that at all.
Hmm.
It's pretty standard stuff in terms of the themes of the episode. You know what we didn't get into at all is the free range parenting of it all, right? Because Harriet is
Oh,
very
yeah.
on her own in the big city in a way that, again, is very foreign to a lot of kids these days.
Hmm. This is like an aside, you can cut it, but had to buy some shoes over the weekend and I had Tony and Nate with me. So I pull up to the shoe store. I knew they weren't going to have a good time in there. And there's a McDonald's like across the parking lot. So I gave them money and I was like, go to McDonald's and get a snack and sit in the McDonald's. I'll buy my shoes and I'll come and get you. Which, because I'm all about like these like low stakes opportunities for independence. But then after we split up, I was like, what if this is a McDonald's where kids aren't allowed to be unaccompanied and they call the cops? which is possible. It was fine, but there are places where, like the Mall of America, where like, and it's so dumb because like going to the mall on your own as a teenager is such a time honored
Yeah.
American tradition. And you can't be an unaccompanied teenager at the Mall of America after like a certain time.
What?
Right?
I did not know this.
Like, what else? Like, there's so few public spaces for kids to go and be like safe and have pretend independence.
Yikes.
Yeah.
But the moral of the story is they were fine at McDonald's.
They were fine at McDonald's. But because we live in a panopticon, I was worried that I was going to get in trouble for abandoning them in this like strip mall parking lot.
I think you're safe once you got a teenager on your hands.
Okay.
I think, right? Because he could conceivably have been there with a babysitter.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Anyway, I sometimes watching or reading like old-timey New York narratives makes me nostalgic for the pre Jacob Waterling kidnapping days when kids had a lot more free range.
I know. I worry about it. I worry about not giving my kids enough experiences of independence. And they say that, that contributes to all the anxiety that our kids are feeling these days. But it's
Did
so...
you just read that New York Magazine
Uh-huh.
article? Yes, same.
But it's so hard to step out of it when you're in it. Like, it's so hard to
Yeah.
find these opportunities to give them that independence.
Okay, I got us way off track. Ratings?
3 stars? 3.5 stars.
Okay, I was gonna say 4. I would see it.
Yeah, I would
see it, not skip it.
See it, not skip it. 3.5 stars doesn't mean it's bad. Just middle of the road.
Thanks for listening to this episode of It's My Screen Time Too. If you enjoyed our show today, please share it with someone you think might enjoy it also. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyScreenTime2, or send us an email to myscreentime2@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your show or movie suggestions, what you're reading about screen time, any general comments you have about our show. Our website is myscreentime2.com. Our theme music was composed and performed by me and my kids, and our podcast is produced by Katie. You can hear more from us on our other podcast, Spock Talk. We were just guests on the Parent Tell podcast, so listen to that. It was a really good convo. And you can tune in next time for more real talk about the movies and TV we watch with our kids because we have to and sometimes because we like to. Bye.
Bye.
Screen time. Screen time. Screen time.
Screen time.